Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back. Hope everyone's Sukkot was beautiful. Really hope all of your Yom Noraim and all the Chagim of Tishrei were magnificent. Obviously, it was a little bit different, but hopefully they were magnificent. Anyways, I am so excited to be back and learning and looking at different midrashim and different Aggadatas, different stories in the Gemara that we can learn from, that we can grow from, and ultimately can inspire us. I want to share three different ones. This time, it's not going to be usually we have one long share with one major theme. This is going to be basically some things that I saw during Sukkot or in the past week and a half. Things that I came across in however I came across them, and what we could learn from them and how they can impact our lives. And it's the three different boxes. So the first, Hoshana Rabbah, we know that it's a minute to learn all night, to learn the whole night, to learn as much as we possibly can. So this past Thursday night, sitting in the sukkah, I was able to learn with my son. We're learning Maseches Tanis, the Masechta that deals with fast days and a lot of things dealing with rain. It's actually an amazing first Gemara for someone to learn because there are a lot of Aggadatas. It's not such a difficult Masechta. So we're going to learn. This whole piece is a major story, major Aggadata. But the very, very last piece is something that struck me. So the Gemara says, "My dichsiv." What does it mean when the Torah tells us barzel bebarzel yachad, that iron sharpens iron? Lomer lecha. The Gemara says, "What is this pasuk teaching me? Iron sharpens iron." Meaning, like, who cares? Why is this a pasuk that we need to know, that the Jewish people need to know, that iron sharpens iron? Ma barzel ze echad mechaded es chavero. So the Gemara says that just like one piece of iron, you're sharpening knives, you're sharpening iron, just like one piece of iron sharpens another piece of iron. Av shnei talmidei chachamim mechadin zed zeh behalacha. So too, two talmidei chachamim, right? They're sitting and they're learning. They're sharpening each other's understanding of halacha, and that's the idea. Meaning, the idea is, right, the Gemara later says, "Oh chavrusa misusav." I don't have a chavrusa. I don't have anyone to learn with. So therefore, what? Therefore, I am nothing. But we know that when two greats are learning, you're sharpening your thinking. So what does it mean here? The pasuk is saying, what does it mean that two pieces of iron are sharpening each other? It means that two Talmidei Chachamim, two Torah giants, sharpen each other with their wisdom, one to the other. Amar Rabba Bar Chana, Lama Nimshalu Divrei Torah Ke'ish. Why is Torah along the same lines? Why is Torah compared to Aish? Why is it compared to fire? Shneimar, how do we know? First of all, how do we know that Torah at all is compared to fire? Because the pasuk says, "Halocho divrei ka'esh nu'um Hashem." Right? Hakadosh Baruch Hu says, "Is my word not like fire?" Nu'um Hashem. Hakadosh Baruch Hu says, "Haloko divrei ka'esh." Are my dvarai, are my words like Aish? Lomer lecha. So what is the connection between Torah and fire? And I'm sure we could think of some on our own, but this is what the Gemara says. Lomer lecha ma Aish eno dolek yachid. Just like if one piece of wood, it's enodolic by itself. It can't be lit by itself. You can't have one piece of wood. You can't rub against each other, right? It doesn't light up together. Af divrei Torah, so too divrei Torah in miskayim b'yichidi. Divrei Torah isn't retained. It isn't kept yichidi with one person. If a person is learning by themselves, that Torah, the Gemara is going to speak disparagingly about. V'hainu da'amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina. That's exactly what Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina said. My dichse, what does the pasuk say? Cherev el habadim v'nalu, a sword on those who are alone shall become fools. What does that pasuk mean? Cherev al sonein tamidei chacham mishaoskin bad bibad batorah. A sword should be on those people, those Talmidei Chachamim who only, and I think it means only, who only learn Torah by themselves. Bad, bibad, levad, right? Bidud, alone, in quarantine, right? V'lo od ela shemitavshin. Doesn't mean that it's only a bad thing to learn. It means you should be a tipesh is a fool, is an idiot, someone who's stupid, right? So it says that learning by yourself, it makes you dumber. It hurts you intellectually. In terms of your wisdom, it has a negative impact. Shenemar v'nalu v'lo od ela shechotin. Even you can sin. You can come to sin if you're learning by yourself. You could learn something incorrectly. Chas v'shalom. And you could even come to sin. So the Gemara is the comparison between Torah and fire is that we shouldn't be the crux, the majority of a person's learning should not be by themselves, should not be alone, because it doesn't sharpen your mind. Right, that's number one. You could come to be mistaken in areas of halacha is number two, and that's the one. The idea. Oh, chavrusa, oh misusa. What does it mean? I'm going to die if I don't have a chavrusa. No, my learning is not going to be. It's not going to reach its potential if I am not learning. If I'm not learning with someone else. So that's our comparison to Eish. Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Lama Nimshalo Divrei Torah Ke'etz. Why is Torah compared to an eitz? Why is it compared to a tree? And this is going to have a very famous line, right? Every time any teacher ever talks, this is the speech they give. Shenemar eitz chaim l'machazikim ba. First of all, we're in Tanakh. Where do we have a scriptural proof that Torah is compared to an eitz? Eitz chaim hi. Eitz chaim. The Torah is compared to an eitz chaim, to a living tree, l'machazikim ba, for those that take hold of it. It's chaim l'machazikim ba, right? Lo melecha ma'etz katan madlik es hagadol. Just like we know, a small piece of wood is able to madlik es hagadol, right? Sadly, here on the West Coast, you could have one, cigarette or one little piece of wood that's lit. All of a sudden, that could be madlik hagadol. That could light an entire forest. Could be up in flames. Chas v'shalom, rachmana litzlan. Right? So just like by a tree. A small tree or a small piece of wood is able to light and ignite something much larger. Af Talmidei Chachamim. So too is the way with Talmidei Chachamim, with Torah giants. Ketanim mechadim es hagadolim. That youth, that ketanim, that youngsters, they sharpen, they almost light up, right? The gadolim, they sharpen the greats. What does that mean? V'hainu da'amar Rabbi Chanina. That's what Rabbi Chanina had said. This is the famous line. Much have I learned. The Rabbi Chanina said, much have I learned from my rabbis, my teachers. They've taught me a lot. And my friends, meaning my colleagues, those my age, those guys in the Beis Medrash, my friends, my classmates, I've learned a ton from them. And from my students, have I learned the most? I've learned the most from my students. But that's the idea of Torah being compared to an eitz, to either a small tree or probably a small piece of wood. Lastly, and why is Torah compared to mayim dichsiv? How do we know, first of all, what's our scriptural source that there is a comparison, there's a connection between water and Torah? The pasuk says, "Havu kol tzamei." Everyone who's tzamei, everyone who is thirsty, l'chulamayim, come go get water. Lo melecha, ma mayim manichim makom gavo v'holchim lemakom namuch. Water, we know Eish always goes up, but we know that also that water always finds the crevice and always goes down. Water always travels down. Water falls, right? So mamim, just like mayim, will always go from a makom gavoa, from a high place, down v'holchin lemakom namuch, and it's going to go to a low place. Af divrei Torah, so to divrei Torah, words of Torah, eino miskaimen, they're not retained, they're not held, they're not kept inside. Elabimbi shadaito shvela, right? They're only held, they're only retained by a person who's das is shvela, who's a lower person. What does that mean, a lower person? Rashi tells us that it means a humble person. You only can become a massive Talmud Chacham, a massive Torah scholar, if you are shadaito shvela, if you are a humble person. Then the Gemara tells us an interesting story. The Amr Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yoshia says, sorry, when I got ahead of myself, I was excited for the story. I apologize. So why, he's saying a similar idea. Why is it that Torah is compared to shlosha mashkin halalu? They were in the last column on the first page. Right? Why is Torah compared to these three mashkin, to these three liquids? Which three liquids? Gemara says mayim, water, uviyayin, and wine, ubechalav, and to milk. So I would say, before reading the rest of the Gemara, I would say mayim. Okay, we learned mayim. Mayim is because to become a Torah person, a real Torah personality, you have to be humble. You can only listen to the Torah, you can only listen to halacha and learn and be learned. If you know that someone knows more than you, have to have some real capacity to be a humble person. That's Mayim. Yayin, I would say that Torah is what? As Torah, as you age, as a person ages, just like wine gets better with age, so Torah also gets better with age. A person, the more they learn, the more they're able to learn and to whatever to study. So also, and with life experience, also a person should become greater. That's what I would have thought for yayin. And for challah, for milk, just like a milk nourishes, just like a parent nourishes a child with milk, so too that. But I am 100% wrong. Maybe that would sound good, maybe in a rabbi's drasha, but it's not what the Gemara says here. The second line. No, just like these three. The Gemara says that these three liquids they're kept, or they're preserved in pachos shebekelim, in the inferior kelim, like in earthenware vessels. Af divrei Torah. So too divrei Torah is not preserved unless they're not preserved unless they're inside a humble person. Okay, so just like the previous Gemara said, water is preserved. Water is compared to Torah because water can only be preserved in a lowly person, not a lowly person, but in a humble person. So to here, the Gemara is making a similar comment, but now is incorporating also wine and milk. That wine, milk, and water are all kept in these inferior vessels, right? And that's the idea that Torah is only kept in the body of in the mind of a humble person. Kida amrle barte de Kesar. So we have, as we said, Kida amrle barte de Kesar. As we have a story of the Barte de Kesar, the Caesar's daughter, who spoke to Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya. Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya was the Rabbi Yoshua. Whenever the Mishnah talks about, Shiur says Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer, that's the Rabbi Yoshua. You'll see Rabbi Yoshua a million times in Mishnayos. And he was also a leader in the community. It wasn't just a Talmid Chacham; he was a leader, and so he had many conversations with the powerful Roman officials of his time. And here's just one example: the Barte de Kesar. The Caesar's daughter came to Rabbi Yoshua ben Chanan. Check out, this is mamish at this. Imagine, she comes up to Rabbi Yoshua ben Chanan and he says, you're such a Talmid Chacham. You have all this chachma, all this wisdom, all this knowledge, but it's being kept. This chacham and before, this beautiful, magical, majestic wisdom is being kept beklimo mechoar, in a mechoar means ugly, in an ugly vessel. She basically comes to Yeshua and she says, Yeshua, how it's so like almost disrespectful to Torah that all this Torah is in the body of such a disgusting, ugly human being. Why she said that? I don't know, just a nasty thing to say. But that's Rabbi Yeshua is on the receiving end of this, of this put down, of this disgusting comment. Amar lei, but you don't mess with Rabbi Yeshua. Okay, Rabbi Yeshua, Amar lei, Avicha, your father, meaning the Caesar, Rami Chamra b'mani de Pachra. Okay, where does he put? Where does he put? I don't know where he's put. Rami Chamra, he puts his wine. Where? Bimani de Pachri. He puts them in earthenware vessels, right? Which are ugly, which are inferior vessels. Amrale. So she responds back to Rabbi Yoshua. Ella b'may nirme. Where should he put them? Where do you think? Of course, he puts his wine in earthenware vessels. Amarle. So Yeshua says back to the Caesar's daughter. Awesome, you're nobility. You're chashu. You're the chashvisu. You're nobility. You're an aristocrat. You're a chasha person. So you know what? Ramu, you should place them b'mani dahava v'kasba. You should put them in vessels of dava is gold. Dahava is like zahava, right? Dahava in gold, v'kasba kesav in silver. You don't put them in earthenware vessels, right? You should put them in vessels of gold and silver. Azla. So what does she do? Oh, she's like, this Rabbi Yeshua, he knows a lot. I'm going to go. Azava Amrli Lavua. She goes and tells her father that he should do that. So he does it. Ram Chamra. He puts the Caesar goes and he puts his chamra, his wine, bimani dahava v'kaspa. He puts it now. He takes them out of the earthenware and he puts them in these beautiful gold and silver vessels. V'takif, and they become sour. All the wine that he had becomes sour. Asu v'atu v'amrule. Well, he doesn't. What's his name? The Caesar doesn't know this, but his servants come. Atu v'amrule. The servants come and they say, "Hey, boss, Caesar, all of our wine just spoiled, just became all sour." Amar la lebarte. He says to his daughter, he says, "Hey, kid, get over here. Man amar lachachi. Who told you to do this? Like you told me to put it in the gold and silver vessels. Who gave you that idea?" Amar le. She says to him, Rabbi Yoshua ben Chanina. Rabbi Yoshua ben Chanina said it. So he says, Karyuhu. Go call him. Get Rabbi Yoshua ben Chanina, ben Chananya. Amar le. He says to him, Amaya Martlachi, why'd you say this? Why did you tell my daughter this advice? Like what was this whole zach that you were doing? Amar le ki yechida amrila. He basically recounts the whole thing, right? And I wanted to teach her a lesson, right? I wanted to teach her this lesson. V'ha'ika shvire de gemire, right? So now the Gemara asks, so now the Gemara asks, what are you talking about? Or maybe I think probably the Caesar. Sorry, either the Caesar's daughter or the Caesar asks Rabbi Yeshua and says, "What are you talking about?" So you're trying to prove this whole thing that knowledge can't be in an ugly vessel and water, and that's why I have to take my wine out of the ugly vessels, right? You can't be in a beautiful vessel, right? But we've seen many beautiful people that are gemiri, that are very learned people. So what was your whole point? What's your whole point in saying this, right? So he says back in such a powerful thing. He says, "Ihavu sanu," but if those beautiful people, right? If those shifra, right? Sometimes you have a person's name who's shifra. Shifra means beautiful. So the Gemara says, we've seen beautiful people, the gemiri, that are learned people. So your whole premise is wrong, right? No. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya says, "Ihavu sanu." If they would have been uglier, tfei havu gemiri, they would have been even more learned. What's the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying an amazing thing. And it's 100% true, and I don't know. But the Gemara is saying that the worst thing a person can possibly have is gaiva. Because he says it's almost a good-looking person, they probably know they're good-looking, right? Those people that are good-looking, that are attractive people, they know they're good-looking. So there's some gaiva there. And when a person has some gaiva, some ego, what does that do? It really hurts a person's learning. So he says, yeah, you're right. There have been very good-looking people, let's say, and I think there was a Tana, I forgot who the Gemara says that there was a Tana that was beautiful. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan? I got to see. That were beautiful. And they were tremendous Talmidei Chachamim. But Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya is saying is that, you know what? If they were uglier, they would have known more. That's just an amazing thing, that how gaiva is just such a horrible thing. The Rambam says that we should be in the golden mean. We should be moderate in all of our midos. But the Rambam does say that there are two midos, that a person should be to the extreme, right? And that's with anger and with gaiva, with ego. And obviously anger is most probably just a result of gaiva. A person who has no gaiva, a person who has no ego, very infrequently probably gets angry, because you're not crossing them. It's not, oh, how could you be doing this to me, right? So this idea of being a humble person, and that really humble Torah can really only live and be preserved and be retained and be held in the body and in the mind of a humble person is important for obviously for Torah study, but also for life. Right, a Baal Gaiva doesn't grow. A Baal Gaiva is a person is not a person that wants a closer and closer relationship with God. It's just too hard, because they think too much of themselves. So that's idea number one. I thought that story at the end was beautiful, and the idea of the that I learned more from my children. We've heard that many times. That was idea number one. That Gemara that I saw, that I was able to learn with my son on Hoshana Rabbah. Then there was a second piece. This piece is a medrash. This is a medrash in Bereishis Rabbah in Parshas Toldos, And I'll tell you why I wanted to share this Gemara, this Medrash. I'll tell you about it after after we learn the Medrash. Every davening, different parts. I assume for everybody, different parts of davening affect different people at different times in their lives. I'm sure, right? I'm sure when we all heard Unasana Tokef, and we said Miba Magefa, who's going to die in a Magefa, right? So probably this year we were much more conscious. We were much more aware of that line. We felt that line in that phrase in our bones, and it was practical, right? I'll tell you that as we're waiting for hopefully a cure or a vaccine. So in the first bracha after Baruch, after we say Yotze Or Vorei Choshech, every single morning in davening, we have two words. We say Borei Refuos. That we're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu not to heal the sick, not to be Rofei Cholim, but we're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be Borei Refuos, to create a refuah, to create healing, to create a medicine that could cure some type of illness. And I was obviously that wasn't like those two words never spoke to me as I guess before the beginning of March. But since March 11th, March 12th, March 13th, since last Purim, those two words have spoken to me. So there was another part of Musaf that I want to share that touched me very, very much throughout the entire Chag. But let's first learn this Medrash. The Medrash tells us a story about a man named Yosef Meshisa. Yosef Meshisa was an awful, awful Jew. He was a renegade. He was obviously non-observant, and he was with the Romans. He was like a traitor. He was a real traitor. And as the Romans were making were mounting their assault against the Beis Hamikdash, Yosef Meshisa became their native guide into how to get around in the Beis Hamikdash. Here in the second source, in the back page, Yosef Meshisa B'Shasha Bikshu Sonim, when the Sonim, when the haters, when the anti-Semites, when the Romans wanted lihikones lahar habayis, when they wanted to come on to the Beis Hamikdash, to Har Habayis, to the Temple Mount. Amru yikones mehem. First, say, what? Before we go, we're going to get one of them. Amru yikones mehem, from them, from the Jews. That's where we're going to get somebody to enter into the Har Habayis. Uvahem tchila, and they're going to go first. Amrim lei ol umad us mafik didach. But they wanted to, not every Jew wanted to go, but they enticed this Yosef Meshisa, even though he was a traitor. I guess he needed to be enticed somehow. And they said, ma da is mafik didach. You could go in, whatever you go, if you're going to go in, you're going to tell us where everything is. You can take something, and that's something, you can take something from the Holy Temple. That's something that you take will be yours. Nichnas, so Yosef Meshisa, we're in the middle of the second line. Nichnas, he goes in. V'hotzi menorah shel zav, he takes the golden menorah, he goes into the heichal, in the Beis Hamikdash, into the building, and he takes out the menorah shel zahav. Amru, so they said to him, whoa, that's pretty big. Amru lo, ein dacho shel hediot, you're a regular person. Lishtamish bizu, you can't play with this, you can't go in. He went into the heichal, he went to the holy Beis Hamikdash. El ozman tenino mad as mafik tidach. Lo kibel alav. He wasn't allowed to take it. Amro Pinchas nasu lo mechas gimel shanim v'lo kibel alav. Now what happens? After he needs to go back in. He needs to go back in because he needs to take something else, to get something else, because he's not allowed to take the menorah. So they try to entice him, and he says, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go back. After he comes out, he goes, no, I'm not going to go back. And he says, no, you know what? We'll give you, notnu mechas gimel shanim. We're going to give you the taxes that we collect. I guess probably a portion of the taxes that we collect from everybody. We're going to give it to you. He said no. He said I'm not going. Amar lo dai. He said, and what's his response? Amar lo dai sheichasti lelokai pamachas. It wasn't enough that I sheichasti lelokai that I angered my God. One time, meaning the first time I went in, obviously I realized that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was angry at me. Ela sheichasienu. Now you're asking me, I'm going to anger him again? I'm going to go in again and anger him? Ma'asulo. So what do? They were angry. They were annoyed at Yosef Meshisa. Right? At first he went in, but now he's saying, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going in. I don't want to anger my God again. So what do they do to him? The Romans, they're not the sweetest of people. Nosnu also bechamor. They placed him on a chamor, on a donkey, shel charoshim, v'hayu menasimo. right? And they basically dragged him. They dragged him on the ground. Obviously, it was good. Right? They basically beat him and they tortured him mercilessly. And when he was being dragged, what did he do? What did he scream out? Oy, oy, sheichaste lebori. Woe is it to me. Woe is it to me that I have angered HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that I have angered my Creator. This is a guy who was going to help the Romans. And now he goes into the Heichal and he has like this epiphany. Holy cow. He's totally taken by the Beis Hamikdash. He's totally taken by the experience of being in the in the Heichal, in the Kodesh, in the holiest place in the world. And I was thinking, we were supposed to be in Israel, not Sukkot. We were supposed to be in Israel in Pesach, and I find myself like chalishing, wanting to go to Eretz Yisrael so badly, needing that like pick me up of Eretz Yisrael, just because when you're there, like for Yosef Meshisa, it has some magical effect on a person that almost can't be articulated in a normal way. The kedusha there just impacts a person unbelievably, and the lines in Musaf that we said every day, umipnei chataenu galinu me'artzenu. We're talking about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, but I'm personalizing it a little bit differently. Because of our sins, galinu, we've been exiled from our land, and we've been distanced from our land, and we've been distanced. Very few people are going to Israel. You're going to go to Israel, you have to quarantine, you don't know when you're going to go back, right? So many people should be in Israel, should have been in Israel for Sukkot, should be learning in Israel, should have been in Israel for the summer or whatever, right? And you have to have that feeling of v'nitrachachnu me'al admatenu, right? We're not able to go up, and to go, you can't daven at the Kotel. Here it's talking about the Beis Hamikdash and the times of the Beis Hamikdash. But to personalize it, I have that feeling. I was thinking about Yosef Meshisa. Every single time I was davening on Sukkot and davening Musaf, I had that image of Yosef Meshisa. He was just taken by the kedusha of the land, and we're lacking that. We have to obviously go, we have to do it from ourselves. We have to be learning and davening, and it has to come more from our circles here in Los Angeles, here in America, here in Gullus, here in Chutz La'aretz. But what a treat it would be, and it will be, when we're able to visit Artzeinu HaKadosha, the Holy Land, again. Last thing, at our Friday night dinner table, Shabbos table, we learned this book. This is Achat She'alti number 2. We just finished Achat She'alti number 1. It's an awesome book, as it says on the cover. Halachic challenges for the whole family. Basically, there's each parsha. There's one or two questions that were originally posed to Rabbi Zilberstein, to Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, who is one of the main poskim in Eretz Yisrael. And so these are questions that were given to him. They're a little bit weirder, basically, what would you think, right? And you have a discussion at the Shabbos table, and then he has the answer. So here was a question that it happened where there was a family that their dog was run over in Eretz Yisrael. Their dog was run over. His name was Rex, and why there was an Israeli non-from couple whose dog was Rex, I don't know, but that's not part of the shiur or the story. So the dog was run over, and it was run over by an Orthodox, by a Shomer Shabbos family, and in the end, one thing led to the next. And this family, who was not Shomer Torah, who was not Shomer Mitzvot, not Shomer anything, right? Had a relationship with this family ultimately that accidentally ran over their dog, and they became Bali Tshuva, and they wanted now to start in the basement of their home. They wanted to start a base medrash. They wanted to start a little learning community out of their home to teach other people, so that other people could soak in the greatness of Torah and learn with them. But the question that was posed to Rabbi Zilberstein was, they wanted to name the shul or the yeshiva or the base medrash or the program. They wanted to name the program after their dog Rex. He said, "Oh, so they asked, are we able to name Are we able to name our new, kiruv organization? Are we allowed to name this kiruv organization over after our dog Rex? So this was the first question on Vizos HaBracha, and we just finished the Torah. We just finished Vizos HaBracha, and that's how I saw it. We saw it this past Friday night. So the answer was partially based on a medrash. Now, I think some of us might have heard this medrash, but it's an amazing, amazing medrash, and I don't think the end of the medrash we might have heard, but the very end of the medrash is interesting. Okay, that's the connection to Rex. Maaseh, right? Meiser, we have a story. There was one chassid, one pious Jew. He had a cow, and he would use this cow to plow his field every single day, every day. But once this frum Jew with his cow, once it became Shabbos, maniachota. No, there's no plowing. He would not plow. Liyamim, second line after the period. Liyamim, Yared Oso Tzadik, a couple days later or a couple months later, whenever it was, a different time. Yared Oso Tzadik Minachasav, this tzaddik, this chassid, this beautiful holy Jew. He got down in the dumps. He lost his money. Velo haya biyado klum. He had nothing. He had no money. So what did he need to do? He needed to make money. Umachra ligoy echad. He sells his para. He sells his cow to a non-Jew. And this non-Jew, obviously, oto hagoy sheishes yamim. This non-Jew would plow with this cow 6 days. And when he arrived at Yom HaShabbos, the guy would say, "Hey, come on, cow, come on, you got to work. Today's Saturday, right?" But when the cow went outside, Rabtza Tachas Ha'ol. He just clamped down. He just he didn't work. He just sat down under his what's it called? Under his whatever he was holding on his back, under his burden. Okay, because this was a Shomer Shabbos para, it was a Shomer Shabbos cow. And the non-Jew was hitting the animal, makos roast, many times. But it didn't help. He wouldn't work. Ain't going to work on Saturday. Right? The Parah says, I'm not working on Shabbos. Once the non-Jew saw this, that the cow that he bought wasn't going to work on Shabbos, he went back to this tzaddik. Go come and take your cow back. Right? Why? I worked with it for 6 days. I brought it out on the 7th day on Shabbos. To work. Didn't want to do anything. And I hit it. It didn't work. Once now he's talking to the Jew. He's telling the Jew what exactly happened. We're right in the middle. The first word in line is velo. So after the period, the fourth word. Once he said to it. Once the non-Jew spoke and said the whole story, everything that was going on. Once he told the chassid, this Jew, the original owner, he realized why he wasn't doing any work. Because the tzaddik had basically taught, and the para was a good, was a good student, that he should rest on Shabbos. Amar lo oso tzaddik. The tzaddik then says, Lech, go, va'ani amida. I'm going to get him up. Va'ani aseh I'm going to make sure he works for you. Don't worry, right? Kevan shigia etzla. Once the tzaddik came to the cow, Amar la ba'aznei, speaks into the ears, into the ozen of the cow. Ay para kashayiti. He said, "Ay whoa para." He's such a beautiful way he speaks. Is beautiful. Ay para cow. Shayita biyadi. When you were in my hand, when you were in my property, my rishus, right? Hayiti shomer Shabbos. You had to be shomer the Shabbos. You had to watch the Shabbos. Va'achshav garmu li avonasai. Amazing thing. He doesn't say that he needed to sell you. He says, my sins have caused me that I needed to sell you. Right? Maybe a true tzaddik sees that anytime they lose money or anything bad happens, he would say it's my sins. Right? That's probably the hashkafa that a chassid, that a tzaddik, that a Jew has to have. Right? It says that my sins have caused me. I needed to sell you. Macharti otach lezeh ha'ish. I needed to sell you to this man. Bevakasha. Please, Mr. Cow. Right? I want you to do the Ratzon Adonecha. I want you to do the will of your master. Kevanch Amarla. Once he heard this, once the cow heard this, he got up and he wanted to do the work. Amar, the guy is like spooked, right? He says back to the Jew, what did you tell him? I'm not letting you go until you tell me, what did you do? I need what's the secret sauce? What's the magic potion that you use? What did you say to him? Fourth to last line. Amar lo oso tzadik. He said, this is what I said to him, meaning he told the whole conversation. Once the non-Jew heard this, he was like taken. He was like almost scared. He was shocked. And he thought to himself. He did a kal v'chomer. He said to himself, Mazos, look at this cow. She'ein la lo das. It doesn't have das. It doesn't have like a brain. Velo tavun. It doesn't have understanding. But nevertheless, this cow, he kira et borah. He recognizes his creator, right? Now, whether its creator is God, I think it's God. I don't think it means the master. Va'ani, but then he's saying this non-Jew is saying Va'ani sheberana kadosh baruch hu. God, the Holy One, blessed be He created me bitsalmo uvidmuso, right? In His image and in His likeness, right? We say in this week's parasha in Bereshis, we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Adam bitselem Elokim, right? With in the image of God. And this language of bitsalma uvidmuto, we might be similar with bitselim demus tavni. So we say, right? We say in the Sheva brachos under the chuppah and benching, bitselim demus tavni. So hiskin lo mimenu binyan adayad, right? Now this guy is saying, if this Pa realizes his creator, I should also realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created me, b'tzalmo v'dmuso, v'nasan li das, and He gave me das, He gave me understanding, a brain bina, and knowledge. Lo yeroi li la'akir es borei. Shouldn't I also recognize my creator? So miyad, immediately, nitgayer. This non-Jew was so impressed, was so like taken aback by this cow. What? Miyad nisgayer, he converts. V'hayarei shemayim, he was a tremendous yarei shemayim. V'zacha lilmo Torah, and he was zocha even to learn so much Torah. V'nikra, what was he called? Rabbi Chanina ben Torta. He became the Amora who is known as Rabbi Chanina ben Torta, who's quoted once in the Talmud Bavli. He's quoted a couple of times in conversations with Rabbi Akiva. So no, he's probably a Tana, not an Amora, right? Conversations with Rabbi Akiva in the Yerushalmi. He's known as Rabbi Chanina ben Torta. What's Torta? Torta is a cow. Right? He took the name of the cow because the cow inspired him. So Zilberstein says you can name this Beis Medrash after Rex. It could be Beis Rex, it could be Beit Sefer Rex, Beit Midrash Rex, this and that. But it's all from this story. That who cares? The guy's, that's his name. Torta, this ox, this cow was what inspired him to become a Jew. Okay, so it might not be, that's why you don't have so many tortas running around, because it's not, you might have maybe chaninas, but that's how it answers this question. You could have a Rex, you could have a torta, whatever inspires you, as long as ultimately we live lives where we're growing and we're learning. So we had three stories, three different themes, but I think they were all worthwhile. I wish everyone a great week, and hope to learn together next week as well.